Right, I think today's video we're going to look at some plants that may be sort of background plants I don't often do videos on, and fairly hardy plants, but nonetheless we'll look at any damage that may have occurred, and yeah, just like I say, rather than the standard sort of cordylines and palms that sort of most people focus on when we have a cold patch. Worth noting just how annoying it is to have that sort of one-off freeze event, and then, you know, since then it's been, you know, really mild. But anyway, let's get on and look at some plants. So this is my shade corner, which is going to be replanted next year, and we've got a couple of plants in the ground, so we'll have a look at them. So there is a lot of gaps and a lot of sort of potted plants in this area, just to be to keep them out of the worst of the weather. A little bit of a sheltered corner here, so we're not looking at the plants in the pots as such. We're looking at stuff in the ground. So we'll start off with this Fatshedera, which is quite a nice sort of variegated leaf form. Reasonably decent sized leaves on this. Does sort of vary a fair bit. Obviously we've got some newer leaves there, but even in this sort of sheltered shady corner, we have got a bit of dieback at the very top. Not the end of the world, not concerned about that whatsoever. See, that tip seems okay, but this one has brown slightly. But yeah, this is a tough hardy plant. So this is a cross between a Fatsia and a ivy, and yeah, nice hardy plant. Yeah, I'll take a little bit of damage in extreme cold, but in general, nice little plant for a shady area. And I expect that to, you know, you could look 6 foot plus on that eventually. Fairly slow growing, but again, I think it's that is one worth growing just for the interest in the leaves. Nice form and colour. Right, so let's move over to the cast iron plant, Aspidistris. This one has been in the ground for a couple of years. Before that it was in a big pot, and I've always kept it outside in a sheltered location, and when it proved to be, when I was comfortable thinking that was going to be hardy, that's when I planted it out. And even with them -4s for over a week solid, not really seen any damage other than sort of insect damage, which was already there. Yeah, so quite a nice sturdy plant for a sheltered area. Obviously it wants to be fairly shaded, but I mean, yeah, these are, I'd say, slow grown to an extent, but you know, once they do start clumping, and you know, they're a nice plant, nice leafy evergreen plant. Looks good. We have got a little Fatsia there, spider's web, so that is a very small specimen, but I can see the growing point is not blackened off at all. So again, maybe a bit of damage on some of the leaves, more probably insect damage, and then just sort of die off. But so yeah, being in that sheltered location has definitely helped that. So I will just mention the red star Cordyline, absolutely perfect, just due to the fact this obviously under the canopy is the palm tree, so leaves still looking really good. No damage whatsoever on that, so a little bit of shelter goes a long way. Right, so like I say, we really want to be looking at some plants that we didn't normally sort of showcase on a video. We know the damage on the Washingtonia robusta, we're leaving the leaves on that. That is going to recover, I'm not concerned. So what we have got is a Xanthodecia, which is literally just turned to mush here. That is absolutely collapsed. that will regrow. Obviously that's a sort of nice tuber underground there, that'll regrow again in the spring. Nice little fern here, couldn't tell you the name, but nice evergreen with the sort of lighter stripe down the middle, and that's took no damage at all. That's a nice little evergreen fern. Bit of a pop of that light variegation down the centre, which will light up a nice shady corner. We know about the echiums there. They've collapsed, even though they're still green on the ends. They've collapsed and fell into the aquatic planter there, but I might try them again in the spring, get some little seedlings going. Right, so we've got another Fatshedera here. This is the smaller leaf form. So they've got a decent sort of amount of trunk on this. I bought this as a house plant. They do sort of come up occasionally in garden centres in the house plant section. And at the time I didn't know what it was. In fact, I think I got it in Morrison's sort of supermarket, and that has just reduced to 30 pence. And I'm talking probably about 5 or 6 years ago when I first started getting into sort of plants. And didn't know what to do with it, so I just slapped it in the ground. And it's in full sun, so it's not the best position for it. Probably why the leaves are a bit smaller. And this has, you know, these are tough as nails, but that again, it has taken damage. It is in a fairly exposed position. We've had a lot of sort of the fresh growth points burn off. And looking at the ground, we can see there's a lot of the leaves have fallen off, but it's not the first time, you know, we've had a cold event since it's been out, and that do drop leaves. It does take a bit of damage on some of the leaves, but for me this is just sort of a background plant. I mean, it's just covering the fence really. Yeah, but in general, not concerned about that. That'll all regrow, and any points that do die off, that'll die back and probably shoot out 2 or 3 stems. So at that point, that just gets bushier and bushier. So it's not a bad thing. We can sort of keep that tied against the fence. And right, so I did plant some passion vines in last spring. So I had one full growing season, and they probably weren't getting watered enough, but we can still see they've got all their leaves, and they've grown right up there, so they've done okay. Right, so moving over to here. I don't talk about this much. I think I've only mentioned it once in a video. So we've got a tree here, and I couldn't tell you the exact species. Is basically the backstory is this is a seedling from one of the tree ferns, so it's going to be like a mimosa type, albizia type tree, but it's a bit of a weird one because it's taken damage. The more sort of finer foliage has taken some burn with the colds, but this is kicking out 2 types of leaf, sort of a solid leaf and like the finer leaf as well. So the finer leaves are taking damage, while the solid leaves not so much. So I mean, obviously if there's any experts out there on so again, that was a seedling from when I got my tree ferns 3, maybe 4 years ago. And you quite often seeing the little interesting little sort of feather type leaves coming out, you know, the seedlings. So I plucked a couple out and potted them up, and then a year later stuck them in the ground. So where we are now is that this is over 3 meters tall. So they're hardy, and they are evergreen, but with that severe frost, like right at the top, and you wouldn't see it on camera, but they're sort of browned off. But yeah, in general, the more solid leaves are green, and I have got a slightly smaller specimen here. So this is done at the same time. Again, just plucked out with the tree fern, and yeah, grown on. And yeah, so they're sort of background plants which in the past have, you know, been totally evergreen, hardy, and this time with that severe frost, we've lost some of the leaves and maybe some of the smaller, I won't say branches, just little twigs. But again, it's not a plant that I would go out and buy and specifically plant, but that is something that's got a backstory, and I've grown it from a very small seedling, and it's nice to see something get to some size. Right, so moving on, we have got a Magnolia grandiflora. That's taken no damage at all, but it's, in fairness, it is sort of underneath the shelter for the palm here, so that is a little bit sort of tucked away there. But yeah, no damage on the leaves whatsoever, again, other than a little bit of insect damage. So a lot of the Cordylines, you know, I could see damage on them pretty much instantaneously, you know, within a few days of the frosts. A lot of the Cordylines show damage, where this one is a Torbay, Dazzler, or variegated, and that looked fine up to about a week ago, and then a lot of the variegation has sort of lost a bit of colour and browned a bit, but not too concerned. Obviously the growing point is absolutely fine. That's again slightly underneath the shelter along with the palm there, so not a big deal. There's another evergreen climber. You have to forgive me, I don't know the name of it. It's just, again, a plant I probably bought reduced a few years back and stuck it in the ground, and that's been slow, has struggled, but I think it's the dry summers. Last couple of summers have been really dry, so it's probably struggled getting its roots in, but the cold has definitely not phased it, and it's nice bit of variegation in that, so hopefully in time we'll get bigger leaves and sort of cover a bit of the fence there. We've got a wood fern here, which is totally green, and the brown bits you're seeing are the old Persicaria. But yeah, so that's a nice evergreen, wood fern. So that's one of the few ferns that will take full sun. Quite a nice fern. Like a lot of ferns, quite slow growing, but you know, that's taken no damage at all from the cold, and that's just a nice little filler for a sort of understory. One I was a little bit disappointed with. I don't know if you can see that here. So yes, that is a Eucalyptus. That is baby blue, so this is like a dwarf Eucalyptus. It's not supposed to get more than sort of 10 foot, and this one has struggled again. I think when I planted it out last spring, I probably didn't water it enough, and with that really hot dry summer, it's probably struggled with the root system, but it was looking nice up till that freeze, and you can see these were a nice blue, and they are coming out sort of slightly blue on camera, but in general they're sort of mottly off green sort of. So I've no doubt that will regrow, but let's just set it back a bit. So that's baby blue Eucalyptus, that is a dwarf form, and probably not quite as hardy as your sort of gunny eye or something like that, but it does keep the juvenile leaves, and they are sort of quite blue, hence the name. But yeah, that's taken some damage. Right, so let me finish up over here. If I can just step through the border a bit. So we have a couple of these dotted about, jasmines. So you see them in the garden centres normally in the spring, sort of jasmine hoops and that, and they are hardy if you go out, you know, outside, if you plant them up. But this one has taken damage, so it's shriveled the leaves. Some of the lower foliage is still good, so it's still green. It is an evergreen in general, but beans, this is quite a small plant. A lot of the newer growth has taken a hit from that freeze we had. Right, so I think in general, you know, I don't want to keep doing videos on winter damage and whatnot, because, you know, spring's, dare I say it, just round the corner. We have got signs of new life coming up in the garden already. I will say the bananas haven't collapsed, so that's good. They're still quite sturdy. Yeah, we won't get any seeds from the tetrapanics, they didn't mature in time. Right, so I think we'll leave the video there. And on a positive note, small Phoenix canariensis, absolutely untouched. 2 new spears pushing, one now open up, look pretty good. Right, thanks for watching.